correspondent Benjamin Hall, who is live tonight in Amman, Jordan. Good evening, Benjamin.
Good evening, Martha. And ever since we have heard and learned of the death of Qasem Soleimani, we have been hearing from Iran their threats of retaliation, their threats of revenge, their threats to shed American blood. We've heard it from their political leaders. We've heard it from their military leaders. We heard it again today during the funeral of Qasem Soleimani in Tehran. Over 1 million people, they say, turned out to mourn him, and they say they are going to attack the U.S. homeland. They've said they are going to attack the White House, Saudi Arabia, ships in the Persian Gulf, U.S. embassies, as well as numerous other facilities. They also said they are going to attack and target President Trump himself, and they put an $80 million bounty on his head, though they then had to ask the crowd if they would donate a dollar each to finance that. We also heard from Soleimani's successor. His name is Esmail Ghani. He's been a commander of the Quds Force since 1997. He was in charge of their Afghanistan operations. And critically, he said he was going to continue Soleimani's legacy of harnessing proxies around the region, using them to wield Iran's power. And today he spoke to the leader of Hamas, a worrying sign that the two might be planning something together. The other big announcement out of Iran today, that they would no longer abide by limits set by the 2015 nuclear agreement, that they would start enriching uranium, they would start breaking the centrifuge levels, that they would start collecting material to build an atomic weapon. They have always wanted that bomb. They now seem on a path to try and get it. 7 to 11 months is what experts estimate it might take them to break out. And amid all these tensions, the US has now scaled back its operations in Iraq to boost its defensive measures. They've also dispatched another 3,000 troops on top of the 750 who have already gone to Kuwait as a precaution. From a US perspective, though, an official has said that there will be no more US strikes unless Iran does something that warrants it. And on Sunday night, there was that vote by the Iraqi parliament that said all US troops must leave Iraq. It's a non-binding vote. There are a few more stages for it to pass through, but it is a worrying sign of how conflicted Iraq is, and certainly how tense the whole region is. Martha?
Thank you, Ben. Here now exclusively, Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard of Hawaii, a 2020 Democratic presidential candidate, combat veteran, and major in the Army National Guard. She is campaigning tonight in New Hampshire. Thank you very much, Congresswoman Gabbard. Good to have you here tonight.
Thank you, Martha. Appreciate the opportunity.
So obviously you think this is heading in a very bad direction. What do you think happens next?
Well, we've got to be clear-eyed about the situation that we are in, that inching closer, actually more than inching, speeding towards an all-out war with Iran would make the wars that we've seen in Iraq and in Afghanistan look like a picnic. It will be far more costly in lives, and American taxpayer dollars, and all towards accomplishing what goal, what objective? I think that's really at the crux of this decision that President Trump made to take out Soleimani. We've got to make sure that our commander-in-chief is making decisions that are based on the best interests of the safety and security of the American people, our own national security, and that's not what's happened here.
All right, so put yourself for a moment in the White House, in the Oval Office. You have a situation where tankers are being hit. You have a situation where an American contractor is killed, and then you have the embassy that we built. It is sovereign United States territory under attack. What would you do?
Well, actually work to de-escalate the situation. We've got to recognize that these things didn't just happen overnight. These things began with Trump's withdrawal from the Iran nuclear agreement, choosing to move away from diplomacy, further escalating tensions between the U.S. and Iran, escalating crippling sanctions, a modern-day siege against Iran, sending more and more troops to the region, further escalating tensions, and designating Iran's military as a terrorist organization, further escalating this conflict with Iran, something that's never been done by any country anywhere in the world before.
All right.
And this is where he has not put the national security interests of our country first. I just want to finish this because there's two main points here of how he has undermined our national security. Number one, every day that goes on that Iran is not in the nuclear agreement, and just, I think, yesterday announced that they're no longer abiding by any restrictions that were part of that agreement. That means they're closer to developing a nuclear weapon capability, putting us and the world at risk. And number two, because our forces in Iraq, for example, are no longer going to be focusing on defeating and ensuring that al-Qaeda and ISIS are not allowed a resurgence. Our commander there yesterday just said, we're not doing that anymore because now our troops have to focus on Iran, allowing ISIS and al-Qaeda to create and mount a resurgence that further puts us and our national security at risk.
There are plenty of people who agree with you, and then there are people on the other side of the equation who say when you are presented with intelligence, and members of Congress are going to hear what that intelligence was, I imagine, on Wednesday, or at least a little bit more information on these imminent threats, and you don't take the target of opportunity to take this person out who is behind those threats to American citizens and American military, you take a risk of having people then turn back to you and say, how could you have allowed our people, our military, to be made vulnerable by this attack when you knew you had the opportunity to take this guy out? And I want you to listen for just a second to Sergeant Bartlett, who has been a frequent guest on this program, when he talked to us the other night about the IED that was Iranian-made that blew him up and changed his life and took away his friends. Watch this.
It's retribution for guys like this. Sergeant First Class Brian Mancini, dead at the hands of Iranian, past his injuries. Sergeant William J. Brooks, Corporal Bishop, Robert Siddham. All these guys have died at the hands of the Iranians in this current regime, and some to the Quds Force, and Soleimani at his hands. So for us, it's retribution.
So given the opportunity to take him out and prevent further attacks against men and women like that, how do you not take it?
Oh, look, Martha, I'm the only candidate running for president who's actually served in uniform in Iraq during the height of the war. I understand very clearly both what happened and the situation, the challenges that we are dealing with there now. But here's the key, that as Commander-in-Chief, the Commander-in-Chief should not be making decisions based on who is a bad guy or even who has blood on their hands. The Commander-in-Chief needs to make a decision about what is in the best national security interests of our country. And I just gave you the two biggest examples of how Trump's decision has undermined our national security and made the American people less safe. That is at the crux of what is wrong with the decision that Donald Trump made, and why it's so critical that we have a commander-in-chief who has experience and understanding in both foreign policy and our national security to make and with the foresight to see what the consequences of those decisions will be. This is why I'm running for president, to bring the experience that I have to fulfill that responsibility and to serve as commander-in-chief.
Everybody respects your service and your ability to discuss it from your own perspective, from your experiences there as well. I just want to play this. This is a soundbite from the Hezbollah leader, Nasrallah, threatening Americans and warning U.S. forces.
When the American soldiers and officers' coffins start moving to the United States, as they came vertically, they will go back horizontally. Then Trump and his administration will recognize that they really lost the region and they will lose the elections.
Interpret that threat for us, in practical terms. What do you expect to happen now?
Look, it's hard to say with specifics, but I think that this statement is further affirmation of how this step that Trump took is a serious escalation of this war that further puts the American people and our troops in the region at risk. This is why I am calling for our troops to get out of Iraq and Syria now, because the longer that they stay there, the more likely it is that we will find ourselves entrenched into another endless quagmire of a war with no one able to define what does winning look like, what does victory look like, what are we actually trying to accomplish, and how does it actually serve the best interests of our people and of our safety and security.
Congresswoman Gabbard, thank you very much. Good to speak with you tonight. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Martha.
Coming up,